The first step in project planning and risk management is identifying what the potential positive and negative risks are for your project and capturing these in the risk register. The second step is to develop plans that operationalize what you captured in the register, which helps you with risk avoidance or amplification. And then lastly, there's the risk management step, which captures the actions taken when a risk actually occurs. If you've put time and effort into identifying, scoring, and mitigating risks by developing plans and integrating these into your project management, then hopefully you've been able to avoid or minimize several negative risks that won't require management because they won't actually happen. Risk management is what you do when a risk happens. So now you're in the situation where you have to work out how you're going to manage this issue to keep the project on track. That is, the risk has become an issue, meaning something you thought might happen, the risk, has actually happened and become an issue, something you now need to deal with. For positive risks, these are things you've decided you wanted to amplify the chances of happening. So if you've done the right planning, you should be in a better position to capitalize on opportunities when they arise, which is positive risk management. For example, if you had identified that there might be an opportunity to apply for an award or scholarship, but you needed to have more journal articles published, then hopefully you identified that writing journal articles should be a core project activity. And then when the opportunity arises to apply for the award, you would already have the prerequisites in place to apply. For negative risks, risk management is what you do once the negative thing happens and becomes an issue. For example, you might have tried to avoid the risk of a key team member leaving the project before it finished by providing them with the support they needed, but they decided to leave halfway the project anyway because they found another opportunity. If you had identified them leaving as a risk, then hopefully you would have already identified someone else with a similar skill set that could step in when needed to quickly resolve the issue. So the risk management in this situation is what you do to engage a new person into the team as smoothly as possible so the disruption to the project is minimal. I'm sure you'd still be able to manage the risk even if you hadn't planned for it, just by working out how to react to it in the time that when the issue actually comes up. Although reactively dealing with issues can take time and money to fix that you hadn't planned for, which usually makes it messy and stressful. So by having plans in place for a negative risk that you've identified as most likely becoming an issue, it definitely makes management easier and results in less disruption to the project. For negative risks in particular, it is important to document what happened and how the issues were navigated to keep the project on track, and this should be documented in something called an issues register. An issues register provides essential evidence if you have to defend yourself or the project if it fails or if there are disputes. The register is also useful to keep track of how and why the project may have needed to change, which can be important for milestone or interim reporting. An issues register is another one of those things that you don't think you need until you need it, and you have to, and if you have it, you're certainly glad you did. This isn't always considered a priority depending on the project, but I know when we've implemented an issues register in our project, it's been an invaluable resource for reporting and responding to questions from whomever funded the project. There would be many issues that I would forget we'd faced or couldn't remember exactly how or when we'd resolved an issue. But when we had an issues register, all that information was all in one place. Now, an issues register may look something like this. It captures information like the date the issues happened or was identified, who raised the issue, the description of the issue, what the problem is, whether you consider it to be a high, medium or low priority to resolve, which would depend on the impact the issue may have on the project. And an issues register should capture updates on how the issue was resolved or, if not resolved, why it wasn't. The amount of information you put into each column is up to you. And of course, you could add other columns that outline options for plans to resolve, for example, or remove some of these columns if you don't think they're needed. Sometimes you may just need to document that further information exists somewhere else, and sometimes you may have to discuss the issue with whoever provided the funding to make sure that they agree with your assessment and proposed course of action. There may end up being quite a few updates if it takes more than one action to resolve an issue, but it's important to note the date that you considered the issue resolved, meaning when you think the problem has been solved and you're moving on with the project. It is a living document, which means it's something you should regularly consult and enter information into. For example, revising the issues register may be a set task at your regular project team meetings. An issues register comes in handy if people directly involved with the project are going to change. I knew of a project where the contact at the funding organisation changed a few times during the project, which can actually be quite common during longer projects. But because of this, there wasn't a lot of evidence captured within the funding organisation to outline why the project was on track to deliver something other than what was contracted. The new manager in the funding organisation had no records to help them identify what the issues that had occurred during the project and why the project had changed. It caused tremendous issues for the scientists to try to find all the emails and evidence to demonstrate why the project was actually on track to deliver something different. And of course, there were no meeting or email notes or indications as to when phone calls had occurred. Now, this unfortunately isn't an isolated story. I've heard variations on this quite a few times. So for a scientist, keeping track of the evidence of what issues happened during the project and how these were managed and what the result was helps in your defense of how the project was managed and provides opportunities to improve your identification, mitigation, and management of risks in other projects. This is your responsibility. While the funding organisation may keep track of issues, their lens of the issues will be very different to yours, as they will not likely have your interests as the priority. Having an up-to-date issues register has helped me numerous times, and it's also made it easier to find evidence such as emails by being able to search by date or person. Depending on the issue, the project and the funding organisation, sometimes these issues can end up in court, so having documented evidence is incredibly valuable. So the last step in project planning and risk management is actually what you do to manage the situation when an identified risk becomes an issue, so when it actually happens. Keeping track of these issues in an issues register is a small action you can take to help protect yourself and your project team and keep the project on track. And it provides the basis for evidence should you need it. Keeping an up-to-date issues register should be part of your risk minimization plans in itself, because an issues register helps minimize risks associated with how you actually manage the risks when they occurred. This can be crucial to maintaining your reputation and provides opportunities to learn and improve your risk plans for future projects.